Hi friends, Cole here, and wanted to talk a little bit about yoga and sobriety, yoga and recovery. It's been a really vital for me in my recovery. It was a lifeline, an anchor point, a safety space for me. The first yoga class that I ever took was in a treatment center in California. Many years before I actually got sober. So I had this little taste of yoga before I was ready to get sober. And it still had such a big effect on me though. And I recall, some of you may have heard this from, some of the more longer stories or shares that I've done, but I remember that I was really kind of shocked during this practice. Like I really took away a lot from it. And it took me a while to realize what it was, and it still seems, a little wild how just breathing and moving, how much breathing and moving with intention affected me. Well, I've been breathing and moving without intention for a really long time in my addiction. So not being in my body, actually getting out of my body with the drugs and the alcohol. So when all that was stripped away and it was me on my mat with my breath, with myself, with my thoughts, it's quite profound. And addiction would become very disconnected to our bodies as well. So even, I think, following the cues, like the right hand to the left foot, inhale, exhale, even kind of, taking a cue and putting it in my body, it just resonated so much. Like that was a testament to how far kind of off my rocker I was as well, how far out of my body I was. And one thing I remember is the teacher also talking about what namaste was, and it's a word that I'd heard. I didn't really know what it meant, and it's starting to become a buzzword, but the way that she described it was that the good within me, like the highest part of me, my highest self sees your highest self. And I'm like, I didn't know I had a higher self. Remember, I'm in rehab, which things were never going well when I ended up in rehab. I've been to many, and I never got there because things were going well. I never got there. My highest self didn't get me there. So that was quite a revelation and something to think about, like, oh, I have different parts of myself. Sometimes I act out of some parts, sometimes I act out of another parts, but just to have this option of like, oh, I have another option. That I really liked that idea. AA was really challenging for me. The higher power was really challenging for me, as it is for lots of people. And I started to kind of interdisperse my higher self. What would the best version of me do in this situation? Rather than higher power. Which, depending on semantics, could be the same thing. But that really helped. And like I said, I didn't get sober. I immediately began to drink after this, but it planted seeds. I almost said it laid an egg in me. It planted a seed in me, not lay an egg in me. Planted a seed in me, and I remember thinking, I'll preface this by saying that I didn't want to get sober. I was probably 24 or something at this time, and I was like way too young to get sober. I just made a few mistakes. But I remember thinking after this that, like, if I ever get sober, I'm going to figure out this yoga thing. Like, this is something I was like shelving it for another day. But I'm not going to. I said it in my mind and then I disregarded it almost in the second breath. But throughout then the next several years, it was probably about 5 more years until I got sober. I got sober at 29. Every little chance I got, I'd go to a yoga class, or if I was doing well, I would go to a yoga class. Well just means not horrible. I drank every day. I was an everyday drinker, mostly all day. But sometimes I was more high functioning than others. So if I was high functioning, being a high functioning alcoholic, then I would try to make it to a yoga class. And it really became a safe space for me, a moment to check in. And sometimes, a lot of the times, it's not good what I would find, and there would be a lot of anxiety there. I always felt like the teacher was talking right to me with whatever themes that she had. Little did I know that I always felt so different than everyone else, especially in a yoga class. I felt so different than everybody else. Like these were good people, and I was a bad person. And I was just dressed up like a good person, my yoga clothes, and pretending like I was healthy for that hour. And so I felt so different. So when the teacher would say things, I'm like, oh, how does she know? Like she's like singling me out here. And little did I know that, there's such that human thread throughout everybody that were in the classes that, a teacher, and I know now, I can say something, I can theme with something, and it will resonate with most people, not because it's, going straight for exactly what's going on with them, but because we have a shared humanity. And even though all the different scenarios that's going on with people are different, whenever we touch in on feelings and human experience, and some of these things that seem like not golden rules, but golden kind of like these things that happen over and over again. This feeling that we're not good enough, this seeking validation, this wanting more. A lot of those are just like in human embedments that they resonate. They resonate out. And let's see, I'm getting off topic here. So yoga, you could ask me, like, when's the last time you've been, or how you doing with the drinking coal? Like how are you, if someone wanted to check in with me? Or you could say, when's the last time you've been to a yoga class? And you'd get the same answer. That would give you the same. You could deduce the same thing. And, in the end, I hadn't been to yoga for a long time, and my life was getting really hectic, really, really hectic. And it would always flow up and down. Sometimes it was more than others. Sometimes it was horrific, and sometimes it was manageable, but it was getting less and less, even remotely manageable. And, in the end, I didn't go for a long time. And I was disintegrating really quickly, in and out of hospitals, in and out of detox. I'd started using intravenously, which escalated everything quite quickly, but thankfully. And, in the end, I had an overdose, which, now I see that propelled me. Like I really needed to feel like I had exhausted all of my efforts, because I really wanted to be a normal drinker. I really wanted to get a hold and be able to control my consumption. And, I was coming face to face with every reason why that was impossible for me over the years. And then finally at the end with this overdose, for whatever reason, even though anyone else could see it way before, for whatever reason, this time it was like, okay, I've tried everything. And that was a painful realization, a painful letting go, a painful surrender. And then I got back on my mat. I remember that I went to a sober living Place I highly recommend, sober living environments. They were horrible, but I didn't want to be there. I went to many before I was ready to be there. And this one I was ready for. And just that wave of ease when I walked in the door, feeling safe. I was like a little ball of anxiety whenever I was out. Like every liquor store, every time a person reached into their pocket, every time I walked into a restaurant, it's like everything was a possible danger zone. And I walked into this place and it was like, whew. And I found a yoga studio that had 30 days of free yoga, and I signed up, and it had been a while since I'd been in there. And I got in, and I got into child's pose, and I speak about child pose a lot whenever we're in child's pose. It's a big pose of reverence. And, the asana, the body postures are symbols. And this is a symbol for surrender, a symbol for reverence. And so when I got in that position, I was like, "Bah!" and just like ugly cried, howling. And I was simultaneously, I was so relieved to make it back onto my mat because I knew that felt like my safe space. And then at the same time, I was absolutely horrified that if I got back off of it, that I wasn't going to be able to make it back. So I remember very vividly those two feelings colliding of like this hope and fear and something different. I didn't know what it was going to be, but I knew that it had to be different. And I had to surrender into that possibility, which for someone who wanted to control for so long, trying to control the addiction, even though I had no control whatsoever, but just obsessed with the controlling of it, to really let go was, not easy. So I started going back, and I got it more in my body every day. I got more into my breath. And after being disconnected for that long, the power of embodiment is medicinal. And this is, whether you don't have to be an alcoholic or anything like I was to do that. So many people, we just go through our days without ever really being in our bodies. We're just kind of going on autopilot. So just take a step back and begin to create this relationship with our desires and our hearts and our needs and our breath and our body. It's fascinating, and I can't think of any better way, any more worthwhile journey. And it just ripples out and on, and And I felt really fortunate to have some beautiful teachers. I started in the yoga environment sharing a little bit about my story. I prior had shame. I wouldn't tell anybody. I didn't want to tell anybody that I was an alcoholic. One, because I didn't want them, in case I decided to drink, I didn't want them to tell me no. So, you don't want to tell somebody you have a problem. They might tell you no later. And then the other, I thought that I would be rejected somehow. So I began to share my story. So this was also, my first foray into the world of vulnerability. Because as an alcoholic or an addict, if you're a good one, you need to look like everything's fine on the outside, or someone's going to try to stop you because you're killing yourself. So we have to lie to ourselves, we have to lie to other people, and we get really good at being like, I'm fine. Everything's fine. Everything's fine. I always see, even though it's obviously not like the house is on fire, there's this meme I wish I could find. It's like this little cartoon dog sitting at a desk, and like the whole house is on fire around him. And he's going, I'm fine. I'm like, this is fine. I'm like, God, I so relate to that. And so knowing that this was going to be a big component for me to be able to be vulnerable. So I'm in these circles and I'm in these places with other people sharing sharing vulnerable things. I did a teacher training, was kind of why I was on this scenario. You don't necessarily do this in just studio yoga classes, but I took a teacher training at that same studio, Wanderlust, and we're just doing so much self-inquiry and sharing. So I really got an opportunity to dig in and begin this this inner work, and not just solo inner work, but being able to see myself and then also be seen by others, which is so powerful. You know, that's really what we're all after, to be seen, accepted, and heard, and to do that for others, that co-regulation, this interdependence. So that began to happen there. And with that sharing, the shame began to chip away. And rather than this being something that was debilitating for me, it began to be a source of strength. I began to find some empowerment in it. And it's just so interesting, the things that we are like, ooh, the things that we don't want anyone to know about us. All the parts of us that no one would clap for, that we don't think anyone would clap for, that's where we really connect with everyone else. Again, like I was saying, that human thread, that though, you know, maybe other people didn't have addiction the way that I had it, that either they knew someone who did, or they had, they have a work addiction, or they have a food addiction, or somewhere they resonate. And it's normally over the things that we don't want to share. It's so interesting. The things that make us feel isolated are really what make us most connected. It's a crazy, cruel, cosmic joke of a paradox. The more we can understand that and have opportunity to practice that, to practice like deconstructing that paradox. Maybe that's not the right word, deconstructing, but like getting in there and sharing that, and realizing that, and allowing it to connect us rather than separate us. It's a beautiful, beautiful journey. So I get to teach. I get to stay in my body. I get to speak with others about their journeys, about my journey. I get to support other people through this yoga practice to go on their own self-finding missions. And, you know, my yoga practice has definitely shifted so many times since I started this practice. When I started, I was like, power yoga, power yoga, power yoga, which is great. Power yoga was great, and I needed it then. I needed that endorphin hit. And I needed to move faster than my mind, because my mind was going 1,000 miles a minute. Now I've been able to slow down. My movements aren't so sharp. They're very wiggly now. And that's such correlates with the way that I am with myself now. You know, the rigidity and that control that has now, you know, I'm loosening the grip of who I think I am, loosening the grip of that I need to be this, that I need to be that. It's still there, but always looking to soften around the edges, create more space. And you know, yoga has been such an incredible support in my recovery. It continues to be. When I get on my mat, it still is like my magic carpet, my safe space. When I get on my mat or I get on my cushion and I can say hello to myself, I can greet myself. It's such a beautiful feeling just to sit down and be like, hello. Like, what is happening today? And that I can do that. It's not always fun, it's not always exciting, but the fact that I just get to do that now. Where before, for one, I didn't have the concept of creating a relationship with myself. nor if I did what I want to. That was not a place I wanted to be. I wasn't happy with what I found there. And now, even though it's uncomfortable often, it can be really hard on myself. I tend to ruminate. So often whenever I lay down the distractions and get on my mat, the things that I find are still challenging, but I'm able to be with it more, to where once I couldn't do it for at all. It wasn't possible. So it's like that cracks, that relationship just unfolds and unfolds and unfolds. And yeah, it always will. It's a practice. Our yoga journey is a practice. Our relationship with ourselves is a practice. Nothing is still. Everything shifts. Everything changes. So we get to be fascinated forever. My practice, your practice will continue to evolve. Our individual relationship, our relationship with others will always evolve. So when we come at things with curiosity, release the assumptions and the control, I think it's just fascinating. I think we're fascinating monkeys. And I am really grateful for this practice. I'm so grateful that I get to share it with you. I get lots of messages from people that say, like, maybe they didn't know that I was in recovery for a while, but for some reason they resonated with me, and then later they found out. It's so interesting. I get a lot of that. And I think we have like some spidey sense where we can like feel each other out, because I do that to other people. Sometimes I'll like be really attracted to somebody for some reason, and then later on I realize that we like have a similar background, and I'm like, I knew there was something about you. So I think that's really interesting that we do have this like energetic connection. Yeah. And I'm excited to be working more in recovery. I just started doing, I used to work in rehabs and stuff, teaching in rehabs, but I'm traveling so much now I don't really get that opportunity. But I'm going to be doing, if you've heard of Sober Nation, if you haven't, go check it out. It's an online recovery support, and they have a subset called Recovery Sobriety Engine, and I'm going to be doing meditations for them on Mondays, just like 15-minute intro meditations Mondays. And then I'm going to be releasing a course that I've been working on for a really long time. It's an 8-week recovery course, and it's called Emerge. So it's a holistic support program for those seeking and in recovery. And there'll be yoga classes and meditations, and we'll explore different mudras and mantras. We'll have interviews with some special guest experts on different subjects. We'll be talking about trauma and patterning, and we'll weave in Buddhist philosophy and yoga philosophy, neuroscience. I'm a science nerd, and it's been really beautiful to create. I'm working on releasing my perfectionism, that control around just getting it out. I keep thinking it needs to be perfect. So I'm ready to just get that out soon. So hopefully I'll be starting that you'll be seeing that in the next month or so. And I hope that this is a recurring program. I hope to run it a couple times a year. So, yeah. I'm really grateful now. People used to say that they were grateful alcoholics when I would go to meetings. I remember being like, every time I would hear that, like a little piece of me would die, because it was like such a gross statement. I thought, like, I'm not grateful for this. Like, absolutely, I will never be grateful for this. It felt like just a leech of a disease. And, they call them cliches for a reason, because they're normally true. And, I'm grateful today. Like, I am, for what it's brought me, for the way that it's caused me to like really have a necessity to turn inwards and like stop leaving myself, stop abandoning myself. And now my story can help others. And it wasn't wasted at all. I'm going to get off here before I start crying. Yeah. It's been a beautiful journey. It still is. More to come. And thank you for listening to me ramble. Yeah. Watch out for the Emerge program. Maybe you or maybe someone that you love might find some support in it. So that's all for now. Love from Manly, Australia. And yeah, let me know your thoughts in the comments and share this with someone who might need it. Much love.